Mein Dingsbums. In my room.
Super. Ja, die kommen ja hier wie die.
Kommen oder kommen nicht?
Ne.
Beauty.
Lass mal sehen.
Die kommen alle um 5.
Ah, das ist komm mal um 5. Lebo. Hi, Lebo.
Hey, Lebo.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
hi everyone. Hi Thomas. Hi
How are you?
Sebastian.
Hi, Lebo. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Raynant coming in.
Oh, okay.
Let's wait a couple of minutes. Hi, Raynant.
Hey guys, how are you?
We're
Hi,
gonna wait.
Raynant.
You're gonna wait a couple of minutes to give everybody
No
a
worries.
chance to come.
No worries. Hi, Lebo.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good.
Good. How are you feeling now?
No, we're good. Yeah, everyone happy and healthy.
Ah,
No
Most
issues.
important.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had unbelievable thunderstorms last night, so we were without electricity.
Oh,
And that's why I'm a
Yeah.
bit late. We just had to fill up the generator quickly.
Yeah. Also here, man, it was pouring since morning. Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
How do you usually get your electricity?
It's a municipal line that we're on. Sorry, I'm just answering Herman as well.
Yeah.
Three times now.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a municipal line that we on. So it comes on overhead power lines through an old blue gum plantation. And every time that the wind blows, there's a tree on the line.
Mm.
So yeah, we've been basically without electricity since Friday evening already. Came on yesterday for a while, but it's been off since last night now, solidly.
Okay.
Very frustrating, but anyway,
I can imagine.
getting used to it.
Yeah.
Running everything on solar and switching over to solar power and solar geysers and everything slowly.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how
Getting there.
convenient is solar? I mean, Venom, sorry. Is it?
Where we are, where it's so hot generally, and we've got long summer's days. It's very nice. I mean, we had about an hour of sunshine yesterday, and that was enough for our solar geyser to heat up again. You know.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
It's against the law to have solar power feeding into your system.
Mm-hmm.
But we
Oh, it
have it
is,
as an
really?
alternative. Yeah.
Why is
I
that?
thought
just
maybe
have
they
it-
fixed that.
No, it's still a problem. They're trying to find ways, but obviously Eskom won't just change it because they're going to lose all the money. So yeah, at the moment it's still illegal to feed into the existing system, but you can have a completely separate system.
So you can build your smart microgrid that you can
Generate your own power,
Mm.
feed it into your system, and just run some of your house on it at least. So that's what we do all the time. We
So
just slowly converting.
a good friend of mine, he's doing a second use of automotive battery packs, and so you can just plug and play into your home grid. And if you have solar, then you can store enough energy for that kind of purposes, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we've got now. We've got battery packs. So it stores in the battery, and then it lasts for about 12 hours.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
Hi.
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 How are you,
Lerato?
Sebastian?
How are you?
I'm good, and you? What time? You're no longer starting at
Herman.
6.
No, just
You're no
today.
longer. Oh,
Just-
just today.
Just today.
Oh, I
Because
nearly
we-
missed it because I was looking at 6 o'clock.
No, don't worry. No,
Oh,
just today
okay.
because we want to do a more in-depth, more focused workshop today.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And I think we're also good to start, and probably others will come in later.
Okay.
We're recording this session.
All right.
As you can see, it's we're live on YouTube, but not publicly. But
All right.
this is a way for us to record it so we can watch it all later.
Oh, okay. All right. But you've been
and-
good in German.
Sorry?
You guys have been good.
Yeah. Spring is coming. It's getting warm outside. Probably we hit the 20 degrees.
Where
And
in
that's
German?
that's probably 30 degrees more than last week.
What?
Yeah.
We
It's
had
hot.
minus 15
Yes.
grade we had the week before last week. And
Yeah.
this week is probably going to hit 20.
Wow. Wow.
Lerato, don't worry. These Germans are all topsy-turvy.
I needed to get that background, Herman. Yeah. Okay. Are we good to
Good.
go?
Yeah, let's start.
Okay.
Let's make the most out of the time we have.
Yeah.
So,
So-
maybe we start with a quick update from our side, and then we are going to have a workshop because we want to define the ecosystems we are going to tackle more in detail, because this is the foundation of our accelerator program. Yeah, and so we want to learn more and make it more clear today. But just for a quick update, Thomas and I, we are continuously working on our slide deck. So that needs some more process and progress. Yeah, we already had a discussion today how to continue that. We are currently started drafting a kind of a new red line for our narrative, because we believe this is really crucial to present it to investors. And our main objective is that we are ready to have a recorded pitch. Yeah, and it would also be great to have some of you maybe integrated into that, so that not again just the two white guys from Berlin are pitching Motherland. Yeah, and but we are going to inform you when we are close to a finished pitch, and then we'll bring you online to that. So, and then we had a session last week where we put some numbers into the business case, so that we can start now calculating how much budget do we need to run a half a year accelerator program on site in South Africa. So right now we just had a look at the cost of personnel. Yeah, this is what we also shared with the group, and there's a Google sheet with that. So Wayne was very supportive here, and with his background, that helped a lot. So I had a very good conversation with a guy who was willing to give us some very good introductions. Yeah, and he really liked what we are doing. He's also into impact and also doing projects in Africa right now. So that all looks good, but we need to finish the presentation and making it all decent enough to really share it with other people. So there's something more to do. Herman, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest that if we don't talk, let's mute the microphone because there is background noise which we don't need.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Herman.
Hi, Sebastian. Do you mind, guys, if we can record the meeting?
We do already.
Okay. Usually it will show on my side that it's being recorded. So today I couldn't see.
All good. So we record it on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay.
And so then it's easy to share.
Yeah. I want to quickly build on what Sebastian has been saying. So the testing of our narrative, which is the basis for the presentation and also the video we're going to record, is actively being tested. Also, as Sebastian pointed out, that he shared this with people, so that I, with somebody who's building an impact fund for a family office out of UK, that family office shifted their focus from agriculture to health. But he knows these guys, Chikululu. Does anybody happen to know them? They're in South Africa. Social venture fund.
Yeah, I think I've heard about that. It's one with the West, is it FNB West Bank, something like that.
Yes, I think that's it. Yeah, and he's very close to those guys. So as soon as we're ready, he will connect us with them for a conversation.
Yeah, and we think it's really important that we try now to get in touch with the people that have already a deep and decent understanding of Africa. Yeah, and are already active on the continent. Yeah, so it's not the goal to convince someone about doing something in Africa. They should be already convinced. And yeah, so and therefore we are reaching out to people and see where it really fits to the activities of the people already.
Okay, so this is a rough overview of what's happening from our end, and what we would like to achieve today is to get a deeper perspective into the required ecosystem that we need to build in South Africa. And we envision for this to happen in several steps today. And the first step being going into the data, so understanding the boundary conditions of preferably the community we want to work with, that you guys envision we want to work with, right? So how big is the land? How many people live there? All of the, is there water? Is there no water? Things like that. Where does electricity come from? Is it all of these boundary conditions that we come up with? And then we imagine the best possible way for this space, this community, to live independently. In pure theory, utopian, right? We imagine a wall around, and then imagine what it is like in there if it's independent of the rest of the world. And then we open that wall and see what might be some effects that are forces against what we want to do, what might work against us. And through all of this, in the last step, we want to identify the building blocks of a functioning ecosystem in the first version. So what kind of supports elements are needed to move that community towards self-sufficiency and self-reliance? That's our ultimate goal. And based on this is the outcome for today. And based on this, we will go into the knowledge that our students have sorted through, created for us, in order to map existing startups against that for the building blocks. And these startups then will be invited into the prototype, or into the program. So this is an important session today for that reason. And with that, I'd like to open, and we allot roughly half an hour per segment. So we have these 4 segments, half an hour each. So starting now, I would like to open the first segment, which is about understanding the community we are working with, all the boundary conditions. Sebastian is starting to take notes. Whenever he's ready, he's going to start sharing his screen, and then we just go. So let's begin with some easy things. How many people are we talking about? Who wants to take on? Hello? So if we envision a community, the community we preferably want to work with in South Africa.
Or do you have questions? What we do now?
Like?
Is it clear to everyone?
In my mind,
Thomas, we can't hear
is
you.
it clear? Ah, okay. That explains a lot. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay. Lebo, I saw you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You can or you can't?
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you hear everything I was saying earlier?
For me, yes, I
No.
did.
Yeah, I lost you
think
halfway through the
Armand didn't.
conversation.
Okay. So, please give me a sign immediately if you don't hear me, so we can make sure that we don't have to repeat too much. Let me begin again. So we're going to go through 4 elements today. Element number 1 is getting an understanding of the community we want to work with in South Africa, which means the numbers, like population, demographic information, etc. The second would be that we envision an ideal situation for that community. This is somewhat utopian and unrealistic, but this gives us an idea of where we want to go. So we envision this community to be completely isolated from the rest of the world, working on its own. How does that function? This gives us information on what is needed. What does this community need to be self-sufficient and self-reliant at the core? And then step 3, we look at what are blockers, what are forces against that that could prevent us to move in this direction. And then, as a fourth and final step today, we want to look at what are the building blocks we can put together for the first prototype that point in the direction of the utopian version of the ecosystem and don't create too much friction and conflict with the blockers. And that will be our basis for the further step, which is mapping those building blocks against our database and the work the students have done to identify the startups for the first batch of the program. Does that all make sense?
Can you repeat the fourth one? I need to get clarity on the fourth one.
Okay. So the fourth one is that we so imagine it in the following way. We have in step 2, we look at the ideal way. And let's say there are 20, 30 elements that we want to put together, and it all is super beautiful. And then there are some, in the next step, there are some blockers, some things that just don't work because maybe for some regulatory issues or big ownership issues, we cannot do certain things. So out of those 20, 30 things, half of them fall away. And then we're left with 15 that could work together, and then we strip some, and then we're left with 10 building blocks that we can build right now in that community to move towards self-sufficiency. Does it make sense?
And maybe to add here, so I think the goal is, imagine if we run the 6 months program, in the end of the program, we want to see that things are working, or we at least have learned what is not working, and we have understood why it is not working. So that's why we should select coherent activities, yeah, and solutions that are somehow connected and are feasible in putting into place and putting into work with the community we have selected in a time frame of 6 months. That doesn't mean that it's not continued after the 6 months, but running something where we cannot see any changes, any impact, is probably not a good thing to do. And that's why we think we need now to think about what to select and what to, so to say, what are the attack vectors, yeah, to really have a positive impact on the community we select in the first step, yeah.
Gentlemen, you are bringing some ideas into play which put a perspective on the whole approach, different to what I understood so far. And I'm calling specifically on Wayland to either contradict me or maybe confirm my feelings. Namely, so far I've been looking at, and my understanding led me to look at, let's say, a project, e.g. a farm, around we would start building a community eventually. Now, if I listen to you, the starting block is actually identifying the community before we even do the prototype. Now, for me, there is a distinct difference. As I said, I'm willing to admit maybe I didn't listen for the last couple of months, or I misunderstood something, but there is a slant to the whole thing, which is different to the perception I had so far. I will comment on how to go about by approaching a community in a moment, but first I need that clarity because I'm a bit confused here.
Maybe we need to clarify the definition of a community. Yeah. So I think we are not building something where are no people and then we bring in the people. Our understanding of a community is an already existing community of people that are doing farming, that are doing maybe food processing, that are doing logistics to sufficiently bring food to the community. And this is what we need to select. That was our understanding. So we need to understand whom we are bringing the solutions to, or we are looking at the problems to be solved. The community that is more referred into kind of an ecosystem of the solutions, yeah, along the value chain. This is something different we need probably to build. Yeah, and these are more the type of the solutions. But when Thomas now has talked about community, there will be people, and we are talking about the people that are already doing stuff. Yeah, and we need to find this community to work with.
So let me phrase it from a different perspective. So if there's a farmer, and we want to work with that farmer as a starting point, the produce of that farm has to go somewhere. And it needs to be local. I think we were very clear on this always. So the people who are consuming whatever comes out of that farm are in that terminology that I was using earlier, the community. So the farmer and the people together constitute the community. Whether they see themselves as a community at the moment like that, I don't know, and probably not. But from our perspective, we should look at how can we bring these people together. Okay. Does that make more sense?
Let me add something to that whole thing. So far, we, from a South African point of view, have very much looked at operations within the urban areas. Okay? Now, in the urban areas, there is automatically a market. There is possibly less a feeling of unity and community, but so the way I see things now, based on what you just explained, we possibly should be looking at slightly more rural areas where there is a farmer who primarily produces for the local people and either sells directly through little traders to the consumers, or the consumers might even buy directly from him or her. Now, there are these possibilities. I actually discussed a particular one today with a friend of mine who's been in agriculture. He was a farmer in Zimbabwe. He was a farmer in South Africa, and he is an agricultural consultant, one of the better known in this country. And here we look at one specific example where an existing kind of project is being driven by an individual to work with communities. Now, my original perception, as I said, was much more from an urban point of view rather than from a rural point of view. Wayland, can you kind of step in and correct me if I'm wrong, or?
Yeah, I think the term community is probably what's causing the confusion. And I don't think even what Herman said now about it being urban versus rural, I don't think it really matters. There could be an urban community, like we spoke about over the weekend, Herman, which has an offset at a farmer's market or a municipal market or anything. That's their offset. It's a community of farmers that could consist of 3 people. how do we take them to the next phase? I think that's the point. And yes, it's been a bit confusing for me as well, and I think we'll get to that now.
Okay, let me go one step back. So we've been talking a lot about local resiliency. So we've said making local communities self-sufficient and self-reliant. That's something that's something we repeated again and again.
Correct.
So what does that mean in only my view now? This means that there are people producing things and there are people consuming things. And whether and there's a local interdependence and a global independence. Okay, that's important. And the farmers are not producing for the global market, and the consumers are not consuming from the global market, maybe not even from the national market and to the national market, but just on a local level.
Thomas,
yeah.
You both were referring to creating making them self-sufficient. Okay, and again, I think it is then there is a distinct difference between an urban and a more rural area for the very simple reason. It was in an urban environment, both farmers and consumers act a lot more independently than, for example, in a rural environment where there may be or
not necessarily, Herman. I get a food delivery from a local farmer. Here, me sitting in Berlin, from a local farmer outside of Berlin every week. So there is a connection, a direct connection between me and one specific farm outside of Berlin. So that's then the term community changes, but still it is a community. There's a connection between those who create and those who consume on a local level. So we maybe should define local, and so that in terms that it is the distance between where the food is produced and the food can be bridged with, I don't know, a certain, shouldn't be more than like a few kilometers maybe, or half an hour car drive or something like this. I haven't thought about it, so I cannot really say anything. But then the community can be people in a urban area, okay, but that's not the entire urban area. But there is a connection between the consumers and the producers.
Hi, Sebastian.
Yeah.
So since our focus is is to try to help the community to be self-reliant, how big should the land be for farming?
That depends on how many people need to live with the land.
Okay. At this stage, you've decided that your prototype will probably run in Gauteng, South Africa.
Not necessarily. I mean, that's what we're trying to find out. That's what we're trying to find out. What we need is something where we can create a closed loop, an ecosystem, right? Where we can contribute with what we're doing here with Motherland towards the self-sufficiency and self-reliant of communities. And we have to somehow prototype that. So where exactly that happens and whether it's totally in a rural or in combination with an urban community is, for me, of secondary nature.
But we need to define it, and,
Okay.
and therefore you know your people and the circumstances in South Africa better than we are. And the question is, on which group of people or community we are focusing on. So,
Okay,
And
Thomas.
I just want to go back to what I said, what's confusing to me. And forget about whether it's a rural or a urban community. I think my confusion comes in around the fact that the answer you gave now is depends on how many people have to live off that piece of land, and that will determine the piece of land. What if you're going to find a piece of 10 hectares? Let's just use round figures. A 10-hectare piece of land, and we tell you there's 50 people that needs to live off that land. I can tell you now that we're not going to have much to do with that community in the post-harvest section of what we're talking about, because those people are probably way from any post-harvest processes. Those people are struggling to produce. So that's why I'm saying I'm a little bit confused, because what are we focusing on now? Are we looking for, call it a community that's already producing, but they are struggling with the post-harvest process, and that's where we're looking to insert some impact funding, because that defines it a lot more than just a community. Just a community, I can give you 50 right now, where I can say there's 10 hectares of land with 50 people that needs to live of it. Let's go do whatever we need to do and let them plant and produce. But that's not what this is about right now.
You're right. So the focus is on the post-harvest. Absolutely. So that dictates the size. So yeah. I was not precise on that. You're right. But still, that shouldn't be something that happens on a global level. So it needs to be local support. That's crucial for the whole thing. I hope that came across, because we've been repeating that again and again.
That's not an issue at all. It's just I needed that clarity on.
So it's not
focusing on the post-harvest process, because that means a community that's already producing food, mm-hmm. but they need help in the post-harvest section.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. You're right with that.
Well, you could even go into an existing operation, for example, and work through the whole spectrum of activities, namely from planting via cultivating to harvesting, in order to see what the challenges from the pre-harvesting side are on the post-harvesting, and then specifically focus on the challenges that the post-harvesting side gives, the challenges that are there, and focus on solving those challenges in the post-harvest value chain. Am I right? So we could still accompany, as I said, a project locally and from A to Z, but the eventual challenge is, what are the problems in the post-harvest value chain, and what solutions can we offer? Does it make sense?
Define project. I'm not sure.
Okay, I said we need at least another 3 or so weeks to identify really what we can deliver. And I've started going into that. I indicated one example. I'm going to have a meeting sometime this week with an already existing operation where a person is driven with the same kind of passion, namely creating social change through agriculture. And he covers various aspects from within agriculture. Okay, and the way I see my approach to that particular person and project would be to go through the whole gamut of farming. As I said, from planting to cultivating, just to get a feel for what the challenges for in the individual segments of farming are. But again, with the eventual focus on post-harvest, what are their biggest problems? Is there food loss? Is there loss in other things? And how can we step in to minimize that?
Yes. And I would like to add, with the focus of locality. So
yes.
We don't want to contribute towards selling anything to the global marketplace.
Absolutely.
That's crucial.
Yeah.
So when I say community, I mean maybe people like that person that you refer to, Hermann, other similar actors, and the people who live there, who might do totally different things, who might also be in a city, who need something to eat, who are the recipients of the output of that. That's the what I call the community.
Okay, get it.
Yeah, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Good. So
okay, yeah.
Good. So back to the question. If we look at somewhere, and because we want to make this concrete, and this is already showing how beneficial it is to make it concrete, because now we're this forces us to be even more clear and than before. So let's look at South Africa. Let's look at one place where we want to do this. What does that place look like? What do we find there? How big is it? How many people are there? How many farms, hectares, whatever? I don't know, but let's put together some numbers so we can create a shared image of what that place looks like. And then we can take the next step.
Okay. You got a commitment from me to gather as much information over the next 3 weeks or so as possible in order to do that.
Okay, if we just put our heads together now, I mean, all 4 of you are in South Africa, am I right?
Correct.
So
correct.
So do you think we could put together something that we can now work with for today? Because that's somewhat the basis for our discussion today. Some getting an idea of what that roughly might look like, maybe based on some assumptions, but what would it look like if you, for example, Hermann, look at that person that you were talking about? Lerato, would you mind muting yourself? Thank you. The person that we were talking about, and just from where those activities are, and cross-referencing that with your knowledge about the population, get a feeling, are we talking about 1,000 people? Are we talking about 10,000 people? Are we talking about 50,000 people that are in the vicinity of that?
Okay, we can have a stab at it, but I don't think it's going to be very accurate.
But just in ballpark numbers. So there's a difference between 1,000 and 10,000, and
Mm.
just so we can put a handle on it. You know, let's put some grip on it. If it's
Yeah.
if we're off by a factor of, I don't know, 30%, that's cool. That doesn't make much of a difference.
Mm. You see, now this is where, if you talk about the community around those people with post-harvest processes already, where it can have an impact. There's one specific project that we've worked with, that we're talking to closely about various things. And I mean, they are literally two people running a business, but the impact around their company and their business in post-harvest and packaging and marketing into the local market probably influences 300 people, between 300 and 500 people. So do you count that as a community and say that 500 people are all dependent on this company because that's where the income comes from?
I would see the end point of the community in terms of post-harvest value chain, which means farm to fork. So where it is eaten, that's the end point of the community.
Venant, you're talking about Simba, aren't you?
Yeah.
I would assume, Venant, that his impact exceeds by far that, for the very simple reason that indirectly he supplies 10,000s of consumers, I would imagine.
Yeah. Hundreds of thousands.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying, what is the impact? Is it only the people that's employed by his company and their families, or is it also the people that his products are sold to?
The people who consume his products.
Because then in that specific instance, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people across the country. And that's why I say it could be such a wide range, because then there's another farmer that lives close by here that's producing macadamia nuts. He's got very little post-harvest processes in place, trying to make trying to expand on his existing farming operations. And it's him and his wife and 2 kids, and their crop that they have at the moment probably only reaches 100 consumers. But he's the type of person that could really be a project that could go far into the future. So it's such a wide range.
It's really good to have this conversation. This is why we are having it.
Yeah.
So we can see where that spot is that we should be addressing.
I think that the focus should rather be on the small guy that has a small impact at the moment, but with a bit of impact funding, his impact could grow to 20,000 consumers.
The person I was referring to earlier, I haven't met yet personally. I spoke to, remember I mentioned the consultant he has been working with that man, and he said to me, he's actually, he's taken his package. He was in the mining industry. He's taken his package and invested it in agriculture, and apparently has achieved quite a lot. Now he supplies a township in, amongst others. The township itself has got 130,000 inhabitants, but I don't know how much of the township he supplies. But the way I understood, and as I said, this is one of the first meetings I'm going to have, the way I understood he operates, he would be the ideal partner in assisting him to address a much, address a much wider market and create community around his activities. But at the moment, this is second-hand information. I have not met the man yet. I'm waiting for an appointment. And there are two other projects in a similar vein we can look to. That's why I said I need 2 to 3 weeks to come across with the details.
Hi, Herman. If I may ask, where is this farmer you're talking about?
It's in the north here, towards Pretoria.
Oh, okay. All right. So,
I have a question about the Zimba guy who seems to provide for hundreds of thousands of people. Is it possible that these people are in several clusters? So how should I envision the 200,000 people he provides for? Are they all in the same place? Is it all over the place? And if it's all over the place, are they in clusters?
He supplies to 2 of the country's biggest supermarket groups. And that's why his reach is so wide. He delivers processed and packaged vegetables to fruit and vegetables to their distribution centers, and they distribute across the country. And he's basically in every supermarket in every town.
Okay.
Presented there, so that gives you an idea. It is for your sort of middle to upper market group that it's produced, but his supply comes from small scale farmers.
Okay.
Thomas, in other words, he does aggregation as well as distribution of his own produce together with those he gets from smallholder farmers. Is that right, Wayne?
Yep, that's perfect. That's correct.
Sorry, guys, I'm just receiving something.
Okay. I don't know if I can maybe say something now. But what I also wanted to say is that I know we've been, maybe all of us have heard about this. There is a farm that we are currently, working with. It's a 43-hectare farm in the, I can say it's in the middle of Gauteng, in Kalami. Okay, the farm is actually, fully operated by people living with a disability. They live in there. Okay, of course, there's been some challenges in terms of, getting the proper access to utilize the land, but the talks are still going on, and they're quite positive. Maybe in the couple of also, days or weeks or so, it will be clear. I don't know, but it's positive. Why I'm also mentioning this is that you mentioned the is it the urban community? I feel that if we get everything in place, this can become the urban community that we've been talking about. We are also in talks with the very influential community in Rustenburg as well. Okay, so we're busy gathering the data as well, that side, in terms of knowing exactly, how many people can we first start working with. I think that can be also sort of like a rural community, but these are just the things that in our side that we're actually trying to push. So yeah, that's what I wanted to also share with you.
Thank you. What I'm trying to understand is where is a good sweet spot for the for numbers like the population that is being served, and so Wayne said there's this family farm that currently serves a couple of hundred people, but has the potential to serve several thousand people. And I'd like to just, for the sake of making it clear in everybody's mind what we're talking about, explore that a little bit. So, Waynand, if that farm that you were talking about adds post-harvest value chain capabilities, say, meaning they can better store and produce, store and move, produce. They can get better understanding of what the consumers want and when they want it. And let's assume that through doing this, and they can maybe create some variety of final product, refined product. Let's assume they address 10,000 people. Now, these 10,000 people are also in the vicinity of other farms. And now bringing these other farms into the picture to complement what this first farm is producing, because they're focusing on one type of crop, and bringing those other farms into the picture and weaving all of that together into one working environment where the various people in that I call this the community. In this community, actually can be supported by some of the farmers in the area. Does this picture make sense, or am I totally off track?
No, I think it does. It does make sense. Let me give you, for a better, clearer picture, let me give you the example in more detail. So this specific family farm that's nearby is a black emerging farmer that is probably in his mid 40s. He used to be a human relations consultant expert in the big city, and he decided that's not where he wants to be. He wants to get out of the city and he wants to raise his kids on a farm. He purchased this farm with his savings, and he's been planting macadamia nuts and avocados for the last 4 years with funding that he gets from government and bank loans and things. He's now producing his first crop of macadamias. It's now actually in its third year of producing. He bought a farm that had some nuts on it. He doesn't have the storage facilities on farm, so he has to transport the macadamia nuts 50 kilometers to us to come and put it in dryers with us. So already between the time of harvesting and bringing it to us, he loses 1 or 2% in the nuts going moldy or whatever damage, fungus and everything else that grows on the nut. So he loses between 1 and 2% already. If he had the capability and the finances to dry the nuts on his own farm, he would already have a huge impact on his bottom line. He would also then be able to store it on his own farm, and instead of what he's doing at the moment, bringing it to us and we send it off to a factory to be cracked, he has a vision of installing a small cracking facility on his farm as well, cracking the nuts himself on the farm and going through the post-harvest treatments, and then either doing chocolate coating or roasted macadamia nuts. So it's value adding. And if he can achieve that, that product will go out to thousands of people. But at the moment, he's limited by the fact that he doesn't even have a drying bin on his farm. So he has to transport that to us. and from us it goes to the factory and it gets exported to all over the world. This year, he's actually put in a very small homemade drying facility and is keeping half of his crop, drying it there and hand cracking it so that he can sell it into the local market because he can get better prices in the local market. And that's just a typical example of someone at that small level. Now, the impact around him is difficult to really say, but I think he's the type of person that would influence a huge number of other people to plant macadamia nuts and supply him if he starts upgrading his post-harvest processes and his value-adding processes to become suppliers for him to grow his own business. And then there's a typical example of more macadamia growers in another area close by. They were given the macadamia trees through a government project many years ago. They planted, the trees are producing. All they're doing is they're just transporting it to the local factory. There's no value adding, there's no post-harvest treatment. That all gets passed on. They are a group of about 50 farmers, could have a massive, massive impact if that gets developed into their own product, their own brand, their own proudly South African brand of macadamia nuts. So there's a huge sort of discussion to take place around that part of it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, yes. So that's the level of concreteness we're looking for. I think the focus on just macadamia is a bit too small. So from the perspective of the people receiving this product, we could maybe widen the image and say, okay, what else do they want? He also produces avocado, but then they might have a tomato from time to time or something like this. So where do those tomatoes come from? And can we somehow through this process now, looking at the consumer needs and the reachable market for him, come to some sort of an understanding, shared understanding of what such a community might look like. And then only as a last final step, look into where this is. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it also becomes a case of once you've identified these so-called communities or projects, you need to then fill in the empty boxes with each one. Because the same farmer that's growing macadamias now is also growing avocados, he's also growing dragon fruit. In between the dragon fruit, he's growing turmeric as a cash crop. He's growing the ground nuts as a cash crop. So it does differ from one project to the next. But I'm just using him in this sense as an example as well. I'm not in any way saying that we should even consider him because it's out here. It's about 500 kilometers from civilization. So I think I'm just using him as an example, as a practical example of someone that we're already working with.
Yeah. But if we continue to build on this example and say, so let's look at one of the typical consumers of his product under the assumption that he can manage the post-harvest things somehow magically through our project here, through Motherland. So now I can spend one day eating macadamia and avocado and a dragon fruit, and then where does the rest of my stuff come from? So where do my beans come from? Where do my bananas come from?
Where do your vegetables come from? Which is
exactly.
Which is a much wider kind of field than.
Okay, so where do my veggies come from?
You know that going back to Lebo's earlier remark, I strongly advocated Clooney as our first prototype, and in many ways it would be ideal. But you also know of my reservations, and they haven't gone less. And I see, based on the experience and getting a kick into my teeth by not supplying ideas, I see very little hope of a reconciliation here and developing that project, because, as I said, in many ways it would be ideal, but it needs a bit more than what is just being presented here. But that's a different story altogether.
Okay, let's not go into any concrete things right now, except for setting up a shared understanding of a community. And then we look where the best place is for the application. So can we follow that image and say, where do those people who are supplied by Waynand's farmer, where do they get their veggies from?
I think, Waynand, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that macadamias have a wider appeal and a market that is not only local, but could go fairly wide beyond. I'm sure that your avocados that you grow are not only eaten in Zanin, whereas vegetables are a much more local thing. You don't produce lettuce in Cape Town and supply to the Zimbabwe border 1,500 or 2,000 kilometers away. So I think your question, Thomas, is very justified. And if we look at the most populous province, namely Gauteng, not only the most populous province, but also the economic powerhouse of South Africa, we need to look at, for example, vegetable farming and creating community in that area. For prototyping. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be replicated somewhere else.
I agree 100%. I think we should definitely base the first prototype or the first plan around Gauteng province.
Yeah, I also agree with Herman that maybe our focus should be more on the vegetable planting instead of nuts. Because I mean, I like the project that Waynand has just described. It's quite an incredible project, but I feel like it's targeting a certain kind of group or community, which is like high class, middle class. But then what happens to those who are at the lower level? What happens to them? So yeah, I would assume probably vegetable is the way to go at the moment rather than nuts. But
okay, wonderful. So we have two interesting boundary conditions now. We have an area and we have a product. So we have Gauteng and we have vegetables. Can you? So for me, these are two words. I've been to South Africa, but that's first of all, that's 20 years ago. And secondly, I just have no image. Can you fill my empty mind with some images of what vegetable production and consumption in Gauteng looks like?
Look, I think the vegetable consumption in Gauteng is very high. Looking at also Gauteng being one of the, I think if it is the right term, economic hub. I think we've got how many millions? If you can help me, I think it's about 11 million or so. And looking at how what you call the locations as well, we also have a lot of people surrounding, who are feeding mainly on vegetables on almost on daily basis. If it's not spinach today, it can be spinach and tomatoes today, or carrots, or whatever it is. But the thing is, they eat vegetables almost every day. Yeah, so the demand of vegetables in South Africa or in Gauteng is very high.
So when we talk about Gauteng, how many people live there?
12.7 million.
7 million.
12.7 million.
Yes, last year I know it was previously 11 million, but now, yeah, it has grown.
So let's zoom in a little, or no, let's do it the other way around. Where does all of the veggie come from that those people, those 12.7 million people consume?
Look, when you go to there is one of the biggest, market. It's called Johannesburg Market, right? And there is another one in Pretoria as well. But when you look at the vegetables or maybe the fruits, they all come from outside provinces. It's either it can be Limpopo or Northwest or somewhere there. Not much that is produced in Gauteng in the.
And why is that so?
Yeah. Look,
I would assume
yes.
there isn't enough arable land in Gauteng. Instead, they use it for residential. That's my assumption.
That's the other thing. Yes.
And climatic. It's not. It's I felt it's low rainfall, cold winters. It's not suitable unless you're doing it in tunnel production or aquaponics or hydroponics. It's not the easiest climate to produce it in. So that's why your Limpopo province, if you're looking at the map there where you are now, that's Polokwane, that's near where we are. So that's Limpopo province.
So where is it? Can you guide me a little bit? I cannot find it.
Okay, zoom in to the top right.
Yeah, so here.
Yeah, there's a place called Polokwane right there. Just above your arrow there, yeah?
Okay.
And there's a tiny town called Zanin, that's where we are based.
So this
to your left.
Here? To my left?
Yeah, right there. There's a town called Zanin. That's where we are, to your left, where you are now. More left there, and a little bit more. Yeah, that's Zanin. So that's where I live, and that's where we're based. And that's about 500 kilometers from Gauteng province. But we've got the perfect tropical and subtropical climate, and that's where most fruit production takes place. And then your vegetable production is more to the Northern Cape again, which is Northern Cape, Western Cape, even KwaZulu-Natal, a lot of vegetable production there. But Gauteng itself, it's the shortage of land and the cost of land because it's residential, and your climate plays a big factor as well. It's cheaper to produce it in the more remote provinces and transport it than it is to have land there to produce the vegetables.
Just to add to that, Gauteng has got 3% of arable land of South Africa. So the arable land available is a fraction compared to those other provinces. But the interesting thing is that it produces 4.7% of agricultural products. So what I'm trying to say is there seems to be a fair amount of intensity farming, but farming in its totality is minimum compared to, for example, the province Wynand lives in. What is interesting is that the production could be increased because, as I said, it's the most populated province and the most affluent province.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just to add on what Yemen has already said, look, even though Gauteng does not have favorable weather conditions or maybe arable land and all that, but there are still, I think a fair amount of farmers who are producing in Gauteng. It goes back to the production, methods. You're producing in tunnels or something like that, but it's possible at some extent.
Mhm. So are we closer to our goal now, of being more concrete on where to base our first prototype? I'm not sure. So
Sorry. Ideally, just as Wynand has said, Limpopo is the best because their climate is it's better than Johannesburg. So even with land, they don't have any form of struggle in terms of land. So ideally, Limpopo would be
okay, then
the right place to set up the prototype.
Let's look at Limpopo, and let's look at the typical consumer in Limpopo. Where does she get her food from, her vegetables from?
If you look at a rural province like Limpopo, your vegetables will probably be subsistence farming. If you go on the population basis, we also have the highest population of rural, uneducated, older communities. And they all do subsistence farming, growing their own tomatoes and onions and spinach in their backyards. Whereas it depends again where you're going to have your impact. Gauteng buys from a shop. Limpopo does not buy from a shop. It's only in your towns where they're really buying from shops, but it's mostly rural subsistence farming.
Also in Free State, we have a lot of subsistence farmers who are actually supplying some supermarkets like Pick n Pay and Spar. So when it comes to vegetables, I would assume, even Free State is quite an ideal province for growing vegetables. But Limpopo is still the first.
I've just found an article here that says Limpopo is the major production area for vegetables, followed by Mpumalanga, the Eastern Cape, and the KwaZulu-Natal provinces.
Okay, so on the one hand, it is the major spot for production of vegetables. On the other hand, people are living off subsistence farming. How can you put that together?
Well, because a lot of the produce they grow in provinces like Limpopo end up in Gauteng.
Yeah.
Thomas, not because I live in Gauteng. I think from an impact point of view, we need to look at Gauteng. And from a replication point of view, we possibly would say the next step after a prototype has been established and we have done our learning through the prototype. Now we go into Limpopo, into Mpumalanga or the Free State and start replicating.
Why?
Talking now about replication on a local level.
Why would you do it that way?
For the very simple reason that the should I say the economic weight of Gauteng will add to the weight of the prototype, but possibly more importantly, we also have more sophisticated challenges to overcome in Gauteng, which then can only stand in good stead if you replicate in other provinces. I know it's a bit of an assumption, but I think it's not unrealistic what I'm saying. But again, shoot me down if you want to.
Herman.
Oh, that was quick. I was actually seeing it the exact opposite from what you just said, Herman, because to me it seems that Limpopo is the perfect incubator for what we are after, because it seems to me from what I've heard now that the people there are just getting by, as the majority of the land is used to provide for people elsewhere. That's what I heard. And if that is true, then this to me is the perfect replication of the global problem, which means that if we can solve it in Limpopo, where to create a situation where the people get out of the subsistence farming into being able to live off their direct environment better, we've achieved something. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
You are correct.
Wieland made an important comment earlier with reference to education. Thomas, I'm as keen as anyone else. I mean, from my slogan, if you like, is social change through agriculture, and so an impact on a or let me rephrase it, supporting a subsistence farmer to become sustainable and eventually an agri-entrepreneur is really what I would love to see, South Africa-wide. So from a social aspect, I've got no issues. But I think, well, let me think about it, what you just said, Gauteng versus Limpopo a little bit more.
Hi, Sebastian. Unless we are given a bit of time, maybe to go and investigate, so that next week when we meet, at least we know where is the best place to set up our prototype, if I may say that.
You totally may. Thank you, Lorato. I'm actually thinking the same. It's today. I think is very, very fruitful in the sense that we're getting our hands dirty in the way that we have to start being very concrete now, and this surfaces misunderstandings and different perspectives, and I like that. That's really, really good. That's what we need. So, but maybe also I was a bit too optimistic of what we could achieve today. So I want to thank you, Lorato, for your comment. Maybe we should, with that knowledge that we have gained in the last 1.5 hours, allow us some time and think about this more deeply, and then come back together. How would you think about that?
I like that idea because, as I said to you, I'm talking to people, so I possibly can add additional information to, let's say, to a meeting in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
Okay, so let's end this debate for today with the concrete task of thinking deeply about the boundary conditions for the prototype. Yeah. And and then we go into that again next week.
Okay, Thomas, before we close the meeting, very quickly, I shared with you guys that I've been talking to indirectly to Sequa. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a phone call from the person I'm who represents Sequa and is a facilitator for these kind of projects. I asked him this morning. I said, "Look, we are also I'm involved." I mentioned the name Motherland without going into great details. I said, "One question I have: if we would have one project and kind of combine whatever Sequa is willing to, inverted commas, supply or know-how and what have you, would that interfere with if Motherland is bringing impact funds in?" He said it would only interfere if Motherland would have, let's say, what did he say? I've got it here. It cannot be any finances from the German government. In other words, whatever, for example, GIZ is a big shareholder in Sequa, so we couldn't then combine. But let's say if your finance would come from philanthropists, first of all, then there would be no clash. I'm just putting that as an information. I'm not saying we must go that route. I just wanted to have the clarity and share it with you that we could combine if it makes sense. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, our preferred route is philanthropic money because it's liberated money. And it doesn't have to produce returns. But we don't know whether we can achieve that goal. Tawanda, as you just came in, we're at the end of our conversation today. But I would say if you have some time, it is absolutely worth watching today's episode because it was one of the better ones.
Okay, definitely. Hi, guys.
I'm going to send the link.
All right. I really appreciate if you could send a link.
Yeah, will do.
Okay.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.
Well done.
Thank you.
Just a quick question before you go, Thomas,
Yeah,
Sebastian.
yeah.
Did you get the email from Dr. Professor Opara or his office?
Yes, we did. So I need to send him the invite so that we can fix the date. We agreed on to have a conversation at 12 CET on Thursday.
Okay, perfect.
So I sent you also an invite.
Okay, good. I'm not too phased. You guys can carry on.
Okay,
Happy to
good.
be there, but if I'm not needed, I'll carry on with some other stuff.
Yeah, thank you for
Perfect.
kicking this off.
Good.
Good.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Great.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you.
week.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
bye.